Hey, this is Dimitris, the curious Tanguero. My goal is to bring more people to tango and more tango to people. Today I'm excited to share with you the first part of the interview with Oa Metzner. Oa is a tango teacher that is a social dancer at heart, and I loved every minute of this interview. Oa's expertise stems from curiosity about what makes a better, more comfortable, confident social dancer. And I love curious people. The knowledge that has accumulated is from wanting to go deeper into the simple things and trying to find ways to answer the following question. If I hadn't started tango really young, and if I had a body that was broken by injuries and years at a computer desk, how could I still be the best possible version of the dancer that I am? And how can I share this with others? In this part of the interview, we discussed what the term social tango actually means for social dancers like me and you, what helps tango dancers improve, and then we dived into biomechanics. Finally, and this was a wonderful eye-opening part of the interview for me, we discussed the basis of connection. I loved Oa's clarity on this, and I believe you'll enjoy it too. If you haven't followed the podcast yet, look for the follow button, and if you haven't joined the Curious Tanguero newsletter, what are you waiting for? It's free, it's fun, and you're going to learn many ways to improve your tango. Now, let's dive deep into a world where it is perfectly acceptable to be socially awkward, where trauma pushes us forward, and where bringing your processed emotional baggage to your dance is actually a great thing. I saw in your post, you were talking a little bit about social tango and what it means. And I really enjoy that approach. I would like you to ask to elaborate a little bit, in your opinion, what is social tango?
Mm. Thank you for this question, because I think it's a question that is quite, it occupies the minds of many social dancers in outside of Buenos Aires. In Buenos Aires, if you think about the origins, nobody really wonders what is social dancing, like what is social tango. They just like they're going there, they're dancing, and it's part of their culture, and they're like, yeah, that's tango. That's just what it is. There's no big philosophy behind it. Whereas here you would see lots of groups dedicated to the question, like what is the proper social tango, how to make tango social, how to make tango friendlier, etc., etc. So it's something that, yes, clearly is not the question that occupies the originals of tango. From my observations over the years in the communities in Europe, because I haven't been outside of Europe. Like I've been to one or two communities in Asia, but that's not, I can't really count that. And I haven't been to the US, but communities in Europe that I've visited extensively, and the communities in Buenos Aires, they have very different approach to what tango is. In the original place where, like, let's say Buenos Aires and the communities around Argentina and maybe Uruguay, the approach to tango is it's part of life. It's just where we are socializing, and on part of the socializing experience is also dancing tango. But tango in the places like Buenos Aires is we listen to the music. It's something that we hear all the time. It's something that is part of my family history. It's something that I get into a cafe and I hear that in the background. And maybe I see some couple dancing, performing at the front of at the stage in cafe. It's something that my grandparents have done, and it's something that my friends do. And of course, I'm doing it as well. So it's something that people go to participate because it's part of their social life. It's not like they decide, okay, I'm going to go to a milonga, I'm going to study my moves for that. And then when I get to my milonga, I have enough moves, enough knowledge, enough skills so that people can dance with me. And that people have to be very social, which means everyone has to dance with everyone. And that's the approach that they do not have. It's social tango in the original sense means it's part of social life. So when people go to a milonga, they don't necessarily think I'm going there to dance. Yes, they might go and dance, but they're going to a milonga because it's a social setting where they meet their friends, their acquaintances, where they can watch people, when they can be seen, they can have a drink, they can chat to other people. Milonga is a place where people gather, and it's part of their social circle. And then when the moment is right and the right person is coming along and the music is perfect, they're like, oh, let's also dance. So that's the big difference between the places like Buenos Aires and Europe, where in Europe we think we kind of perverted it a little bit, and I can go into the reasons why we perverted this a little bit. But we now think that social tango is I go to a milonga, I prepare myself, I make myself all look pretty, and now people have to dance with me. Now, if you like, I find it really interesting to figure out what are the reasons for this sort of change of attitude. And the reasons often is that we do not have this culture where it's part of our life. We take tango as a hobby, most of us, right? Like pretty much everyone. Nobody started tango. Maybe one or two people. I actually know one or two people who decided to make tango their life from the day one. They said, like, I'm gonna do it as my job, even though I have never done a tango step before, but it's really a big exception. So most people in Europe start tango as their hobby. Maybe once a month, once a week, they do something. They go out and they're like, oh, I actually really enjoy it, and now I want to dance more. So what do I do if I want to dance more? I'm going to make myself more skilled. I'm going to make myself look better, more presentable. I'm going to maybe socialize, but everything is directed at, I want to dance more. And people think that social tango means that everyone has to dance with everyone.
And it's absolutely a difference in mentality. And of course, there are a lot of other trends from outside from the society that influence how we see tango in our communities. And talking about differences in mentality, focusing on the people mainly in Europe, there are some people that are coming to tango and they try it for like a couple of months, maybe half a year, 1 year, and then they leave. And then you have other people that for some reason we get crazy and we stay in that for like 10, 20, 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
Can you maybe identify why that happens?
It's a very interesting question. It's something that I've been pondering as well, because obviously I'm a teacher, so I need to identify what attracts people to tango and what keeps them in tango. Just something popped up on my screen. Okay. It's something that is a question I think that I first started thinking about when I was probably dancing for about 1.5 years. And back then, I somehow, also looking mostly at myself and my peers and in the classes and milongas, the answer that I gave to myself back then is what keeps people in tango is feeling of homelessness. And I'm talking about European tango. Now, homelessness identified not as in the sense of, oh, I don't have a home, I don't have a place to go to. It's a place of homelessness in the sense of, I don't know where I belong. I feel a bit lost. I feel like I need a place where I'm accepted. I need a place where I can go to and people will be like, come here, let me hug you. People who, if I also now, like, and it's been many years after this first time that I posted this question for myself and try to answer that, I think there's certainly truth to that first answer that I've given. I think people who stick around tango, and this might ruffle some feathers, people might not like this answer, but I would say the majority of people who stick around in tango are feeling displaced, are feeling like they need to have a sense of belonging. Now, all humans, we need to have a sense of belonging. We are social beings, we need that. But it's people who are displaced, need some social belonging and acceptance. And it's also people who are very often, reasonably introverted. So people who have trouble necessarily like connecting to other people by being, I don't know, going up to a bar and chatting to them. Like there are some people who are very easily, I don't know, swayed by the crowds, and they're easily like included in the events, whereas tango people in general, we are more, we crave the community, but we are not necessarily socially adapted to being like outgoing. Now, of course, there will be people who are really outgoing in tango, but I would say that's more of an exception than a rule. So a tango, for those who stick around, is attractive precisely because it gives us a sense of belonging. It gives us a sense of purpose, a feeling of community. It gives us an aim. Yeah, if you need an aim, if you need a goal, it gives you that. Like there's endless goals you can pursue your whole life long if you wanted to. But it also doesn't require, it can be perfectly acceptable to be socially awkward in tango. So that's sort of like a fine balance that you don't really necessarily get if you go to, I don't know, if you decide to take up pottery classes. I mean, I've done that. You're sitting by yourself doing your pottery, you know. If you decide to go, I don't know, comedy speaking, you know, being able to be a comedian, you have to place yourself on stage, you have to be really visible, you have to make yourself funny. It's more difficult for people who are a bit more socially awkward. So tango strikes this really fine balance for those who are looking for a sense of belonging and a community and need a goal and aim, but also who are slightly socially awkward, maybe a bit more introverted. And another thing is tango, it's allowing us a never-ending pursuit, which for many of us is really interesting. So if somebody is generally kind of a person who, there are people like that, and I can almost identify them the first day that I see them in the first tango class. I'm like, you're not going to stick around much, because there's the people who are immediately maybe throwing themselves into something, and then they're like, oh, okay, I get this. I get it, what it's about. I can tick the box. Now the next thing. Tango dancers in general are not like that. They're usually the ones who kind of like struggle a bit. They want to dig deeper. They might not get things at once, but they'll be like, I want to get it. And that's what keeps many of us around.
I can totally relate with that feeling, this feeling of I see what you're doing, I see what you're explaining. I don't see it in my feet, but I can see it in you, and like, yeah, pushing that direction. What you're saying about aim and goals, I think takes me to the next question. It's like we have beginners in tango that they dance for 2 years, and we have beginners that they dance for 20 years. And I always try to understand what's the difference between those two different kinds of people.
Yeah, the beginners, the eternal beginners, as I call them. Excuse me. I think it's how satisfied you are with the simple things versus how curious people are versus how much they want to consume. So there are people who are generally just curious about figuring things out. And it's not just about tango, right? There are people who are like, oh, I want to dig, I want to have like this grit to figure out. And it's something that is interesting for me. If I'm stuck in one place, if I'm stuck in doing the same thing over and over again, I'm just going to be bored out of my mind. There's a lot of people like that in tango. But the other camp is going to be people, yeah, I got what I needed. It works. You know, that's the thing. It works. It gives me my kick. It gives me just about enough partners to go to Milonga and, you know, for 30 years, and it's always the same partners, and it's perfectly okay. Now, we can be a little bit more mean and say, well, these people are consuming tango without going deeper. But why judge, right? There are people who are absolutely fine. They are happy. Now, would these two people match with each other? Probably not for long. If somebody is really liking to go deeper and, in the beginning of their journey, they might be still a beginner. And then that person meets an eternal beginner who's been a beginner for 20 years. There will be a moment when they intersect and they will probably have a really lovely connection. But then that beginner who is continuing to go deeper and progress, they will outgrow the eternal beginner. And that's where a lot of issues in tango happen. You will see a lot of people being very upset about it. And it's simply because there are two different types of people who need to have, who have a curiosity or some sort of trauma. Some people go deep because there's some sort of trauma that pushes them. They can't be satisfied with themselves unless they go deep. And I'm saying trauma because that's also part of who I am. I've done a lot of my personal work, and I've been calling myself perfectionist and eternal student for many, many years. And I've always been proud of it, not just in tango, but in general, in life, in other pursuits. Until at some point I figure out that is not necessarily the best thing. Now, it can give me great results. Now, that's wonderful because I can continue going deeper. I can study. I can work on myself. I can figure things out. But it's not necessarily this never-ending pursuit of perfection, of more. I need to understand more. I need to figure out. That is not necessarily a recipe for happiness. So some people who are going very deep and never-ending studying and never really feeling happy with themselves, that might also be either curiosity, they're just generally curious, fantastic, or they might have some sort of trauma which pushes them, which they makes it compulsive to go very, very deep. And again, if we're thinking about Buenos Aires, a lot of people, especially the older generation, they've never taken a single class of tango. And they go to milongas for 50 years that they've been dancing. They go there again because it's a social dance. It's a social environment. They go there to socialize and they also dance. Does it make them eternal beginners? Well, it's a question mark, right? There are certain things. I dance with some of these people who've been dancing 50 years. And there are certain things that are lovely in dance with them. And there are certain things that are well, could be better. But it's not to say that eternal beginners are always necessarily in the wrong and we should look down on them.
No, this topic of beginners, intermediate, advanced, and the levels, I know it's a huge discussion how you define them if you want to go there, but for me, I'm interested more in understanding what makes a tango dancer a mature dancer, in your opinion.
Yeah, it's a deep question. Mature tango dancer. Now, tango is a human pursuit. Tango, what differentiates tango from, let's say, a workout? Because I do a lot of working out. So there's a big difference between working out and I can be a really good person. I practice Pilates, so I did tennis when I was younger. What makes me a really good tango dancer versus what makes me a really good tennis player? Tango involves, both of them require studying if you want to get good, right? Require practice and hours and what we call in tango mileage. We need that, it's essential. But if you take things like tennis, you don't necessarily need to bring your mature emotional self into tennis to be a fantastic tennis player. You just don't need that. Now, it maybe will be beneficial if you know how to lose, because part of game is to lose. It's important to be able to be a good loser, right? You want to be able to learn from your mistakes. You want to be able to, behave properly if you lose. But it's a very different thing than when you take this pursuit of goodness, of skill in tango. Maturity in tango does require interaction with other people on a level that is higher than two children interacting with each other. And It's not that we are just stuck inside ourselves and my emotions matter and my satisfaction of this dance matters and my skills matter and you should enjoy that. Or if you don't enjoy it, well, I don't know about that. So it does, tango maturity is a lot of maturity of interpersonal relationships. How do we relate with other people? How do we deal with rejection? And that's just before we go into the, deep personal baggage that I'm sure you read that article that I wrote. Before even all of that, maturity and more advanced level dancers, they should be able to deal with other people in the first place. Yeah, that's the number one thing. We need to be able to deal with rejection, with not being seen or being seen too much. Some people go to Milonga and then they're superstars and that gets to their head. Also, how do you deal with that? So that's part of mature tango, in my opinion. But also another layer that I find very interesting is the fact that we become more mature dancers and more skilled dancers, not solely because we have skills of knowing the music and being able to move our bodies accordingly and being able to connect to the other person really well, like with our embrace. There's something more to tango, and what, in my opinion, it is life baggage. When I dance with somebody who is, let's say, 25-year-old, let's say I'm a follower, he is the leader, I'm dancing with somebody who is 24, 25. He might be the most skilled, technically skilled, has the most wonderful, links, connections. I really enjoy the dance. Maybe he has fantastic musicality. But dancing with somebody who is really good at a young age versus somebody who is good at an older age will be different. So what makes that difference? What is it? It's not in the moves, it's not in the technique, it's not even in the musicality, it's not even maybe in the way he or she embraces. There's something that is very personal that people bring to the dance. And the more they age, the more personal stuff they bring. Now, not everyone does that. There are people, of course, who might be, 50 years old, and they bring nothing. That would be probably a little bit more rare, but that, of course, happens. What is for me, the joy of dancing with people is figuring out who are you? What do you have to bring to our dance together? And I really appreciate when people bring their baggage, bring not the baggage as in, oh, I've been really hurt by a lot of people in my life and now I'm bitter and angry and you just have to satisfy me in this dance and make sure that I feel good. That's the baggage that is not processed. But people who bring their life tragedies, their life pains, their victories and their losses, and all of that is sort of processed and accepted and worked on and seen as part of who I am. This is what made me who I am. I am seeing the world because of these experiences in my life. And I can connect to you, my dance partner, in this moment precisely because I've experienced those things. And I'm hearing this music, and in the way that I am hearing this music precisely because now I have the capacity to notice these things, not just listen and consume, but notice and let it guide me, let it move me in a way that is different than if I were just listening and expressing. So for me, the life baggage that has been accepted, processed, worked on, is a beautiful thing when it's brought into tango. Beautiful. It makes humans human. I don't know. I hope that makes sense.
No, I love this idea of processed baggage. It's a very clear idea, and I think it's how we connect with other people. If we don't bring anything, then they don't have something to connect to. And I mean, this is why most of us were going to tango, to find this kind of connection. We will discuss that a little bit later too, because I want to dive deeper into that as well. But connection is both both the emotional part, both the trying to understand the person that I have in front of me, but it also has like a very strong biomechanical component. And actually, I want to ask you because I see that in a lot of your posts, I can understand you have a very deep understanding of biomechanics, how our body works. I wanted to understand the following topic. Most professional dancers, they usually have the same height, they have the same body type. You can really see it in most professional couples. But when we go to a milonga, we dance with people that are completely different than us, right? Tall, short, lean, not lean, etc. And I want to understand, have you identified what kind of adjustments social dancers need to make in order to dance with other dancers that are not like them?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's something you said it correctly. I am very interested in biomechanics, again, partially because I am a curious person, partially because I'm coming from sports and I needed to make things work. And also because coming into tango not from a very young age. I mean, I started when I was, 21. But still, it was never really for the first years, it was not my pursuit as a profession. I want to do it professionally. It sort of became like that over the years. And I needed to find the way to make my body work when I go to a milonga. And I needed to figure out, how do I use this body, with these injuries and traumas and whatever I had in from sports, plus being a tall person, plus being somebody who is generally like in front of computer with a horrible posture. So sorry, Abel? No. Sorry, my dog is, is being very active. So I needed to figure out a way to make my body, with whatever it had to offer, with the positives and the negatives, to work that in the tango environment. And it took me years. It's not like I immediately understood that, this is how it works. It took me years of studying. And I find it really interesting. And over the years, I also realized that, again, observing myself, making myself the guinea pig of trying to figure out how to connect me to people who are shorter, bigger, taller, who dance like this maybe. So there's many different ways to, many different types of people in tango, obviously. So what I notice is that, first of all, somebody who is tall versus somebody who is short have very different way of moving their own bodies. Never forget even about the being in a partner dance. Just their own body will move differently, because again, being lanky versus being short and compact, it's just the long body that needs to move through space. So the timing will be different, the length, the size, the reaction will be different, I mean, the body, obviously the neurons travel through the body at a very high speed. So it's almost immediate that if your brain sends a signal, the leg will move. But it's not like it's the reaction time itself, but for the leg to move for a tall person versus a short person, the leg will cover longer distance in space. So that already makes it, different for a tall person versus a short person. And when we go into a couple dance where there's impulse from the leader and a response from the follower, that obviously takes this multiplied by having two people, right? So the impulse comes, let's say, let's imagine that we are in the open embrace. The impulse from the leader comes, it's two tall people dancing. The impulse, let's say, comes as it should do from the flow of the leader, goes through the body of the leader into the embrace, and then into the embrace of the follower, down into the floor so that the free leg can move. That journey will be, let's say, 3 meters long, 3.5 meters long, from the floor up and back down into the floor. Somebody who is a short couple, the journey will probably be 2 meters. So even that journey itself is going to be, it's going to be a different timing. It will be a different size. Or if somebody is not, let's say, not very skilled yet, so they are they are intermediate dancers. So they go together, they are really tall people. The impulse from the leader comes, and then the follower, instead of letting that information go from the embrace down through their body and down into their free leg so that the free leg can move, the follower has many places in this length of the body where the information get lost. It can get lost here. Just doing this can lose the information instead of this being passed down. The information can be lost in the center, which is where it usually gets lost, actually, where the body has a chance of doing sort of what I call the wobble or the tree in the wind, like there's just too much length in the body where this can happen. And then, of course, the information will be lost. So which means the reaction will be different than if somebody didn't do this for whatever reason, maybe because they're either much more skilled or they're simply having a shorter distance to cover. So the information goes a bit more straight through. So that's one of the things. And interestingly, in my observation, people who have slightly bigger bodies versus being super skinny, the information doesn't get lost as much. So that's just my experience. So people who have slightly more mass in the body, it goes through the body straight to where it should do. So that is often a plus. So some of my favorite dancers have been the ones who are a little bit bigger. Again, because I believe because there's A, the sense of grounding, but B, because the information goes through without being lost somewhere.
Well, that's totally something I would like to explore more. This causation effect between body mass and stability and grounding and not losing information. That's very, very, very interesting. Actually, this brings us to the question of connection, right? Because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to connect with another person. Maybe it's taller, maybe it's shorter, bigger, smaller. And the last years, especially in Europe, we talk a lot about the embrace, the connection. And I've talked with quite a few teachers that they have danced a lot also in Buenos Aires. They're dancing now for like, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 years. And they told me that when they were learning with those old milongueros, they were not really talking about the embrace, the connection. It was not part of the discussion. Yet it seems that now it's a huge trend here. Everybody's talking about that. So I wanted to ask you, what do you think is the basis of connection? And if you have any ideas why it wasn't so much discussed in the past and why it is discussed more now?
Yeah, great question. So first, maybe let's talk about why it was not discussed before and it is discussed now. Again, before, tango was, tango was a way to hug other people, to be close to other people. Then it became a social environment where tango dancing is also happening. But it was never really analyzed as in like, how do I make my connection so much better so that I can be a better dancer? No, like people go to this social environment and then they dance. They people from all walks of life. Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking originally. They can be working in the port. They can be carrying heavy luggage. They can be, I don't know, working in, I don't know, they can be driving buses, whatever it is, right? The people who just get together, they're normal people with very often very physical jobs. That was where, originally it was coming from, which means that they come with, some of them might be like this because of the loads that they have to carry in daily life. So people were just coming as they were. It was not really something that they come and they study, how do I make myself better so I can better connect? They were coming there as they were in their real life, with the bodies that they had, with the injuries that they had. And like, I'm coming to this place where tango music is played and I can just enjoy the company of other people and maybe dance with them. Great. So there was never really a study going on. People were not from the walks of life of, I don't know, academic understanding. How do I make my tango so much better? It was just like, okay, here's me, that this is tango environment, and how about I go and try to dance tango? It was much, much simpler than we now have it. And over the course of years, especially in the last, let's say, 30 years, probably 30, 40 years, suddenly the people started studying tango more and more and more. Now, you can't just show up to a milonga and, well, you can, but very likely you're probably not going to be very successful. We need to study. It's just an important thing. Tango became, because it exited this sphere of, well, I'm just working in the port and I'm carrying heavy luggage by the day, and in the evening I'm going to see my friends in the milonga. It moved into, it's my hobby that I am very passionate about, that I want to be the best as I can be. I'm very interested. I probably have academic background of some sort. I am generally curious about how do I make myself better? How do I make my partner enjoy more? So it made that shift of being just, let me bring myself into a social dance and be as I am and connect with other people, to how do I make myself even better? So that's where the studying came from. And what was the second question? Sorry, what's the source of connection?
Yes, what for you is the basis of connection? What makes connection happen?
A desire to connect, to start with. And open, I mean, I'm going to talk about first the non-technical things, and then we can talk about the technical things. So the non-technical things is I need to be desiring to connect to the other person. That's, we can dance without wanting to hug the other person, but is that going to be tango? In my opinion, well, you can make the tango moves, but if you're not willing to connect to this other person, you just use this other person for, throwing them around, for doing your sacadas and ganchos, then it's probably not, in my opinion, that's tango moves without tango. So number one for connection of tango is desire to connect, desire to find the point of intersection where you and I can be together in the dance. Number two is curiosity about the other person. And number three is curiosity about oneself. That is really important. We cannot be, it's like, that's something that I tell my students generally. Don't try to just dance for the other person and dance through the other person. Bring yourself to this equation. Bring yourself. Who are you? What are you? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this particular thing at this particular time with this particular person? Show me yourself. So it's this, it's not just about the other person. Like, how can I make my follower dance better and feel better? No, also show yourself. Who are you to this follower in this moment? So that is really important. So that's the more metaphysical part of connection. And in my opinion, that is at least just as important, if not more important than all the technical stuff. And I do like the technical stuff as well. It's sort of part of my skill set. Again, because I'm a curious person and I wanted to figure out for myself, how do I make my body work with different people in tango? And also because I needed to teach it to other people with time when I started teaching. I started to observe and try to analyze, taking, again, almost mathematical approach to tango, which is, again, that's why I say, like, there's a emotional and human approach to tango, and then there's a more technical mathematical approach. I'm interested in both. And I'm going quite deep in both, almost like two separate paths that I'm taking and I'm studying. So the mathematical side of it is much more biomechanical. The connection in my studying, in my observations, in the way that I analyzed it and I understood it for myself, starts from the standing leg, from the back of the standing leg of the leader. So how the leader engages with his standing leg against the floor. So floor foot connection of the leader. Then it travels through the back of the backside of the legs of the leader into pelvis, again, not in the front. For me, for understanding, analyzing the biomechanics of movement, it's from the back. Then into the spine, because spine is the thing that connects the whole center, right? Spine goes all the way up into our head, and it connects to our legs. So the connection done properly well, where the leader is not falling, the leader is not pushing, when a leader is actually well connected to the follower, goes from the back, in connection with the floor, through the back of the leader into the spine, and then from the spine into the musculature and the joints and the almost bones, let's say, from the back outwards into the embrace, and then into the back of the follower, and travels down through the back and further down into the standing leg and into the free leg. So if we are thinking about, this is our couple and this is the leader, the connection, and this is the floor, the connection will start at the back of the leader's foot, and not here. It will start here, travel through the back of the leader into the follower at the level of the embrace, which is going to be somewhere here, and then travel back down and back into the floor. So the biomechanically connection done well, let's say, is going to be on the outside, where the inside is almost like a capsule, like a cocoon that connects people inside. So the biomechanics is on the outside, the human side of it, the emotional side is inside, in between them. So inside here is emotional, outside is the biomechanical. I don't know, hopefully that makes sense.
Yes, it's connection from the back wall to the other back wall.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. No,
it's almost like a container. Yeah. So the container is the physical connection is on the outside, emotional connection is on inside. So the physical one is containing the emotional one, and you can't have one without the other. If you only have the emotional side, then your tango will be like this. It might be all over the place. It might be beautiful, but it's not going to be really very skilled. Or if you only have the outside without the outside container, but there's nothing in here, that's why you have to bring your life baggage that is processed into here, then again, you will have a couple workouts that will feel very empty. So you kind of need both container and the human side of it.
I love your clarity. I love what you said, mathematical approach and human approach, because it's very often, especially online, that people, they just decide, they choose one side or the other. And it's like, why? You can have both, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And you need both, at least.
You need both. But there are enough people who are not interested in one or the other. I mean, I've certainly danced with people who, again, as I said, the outside, the technical part is, beautiful, amazing. But then I'm going into that embrace, and at the end of the tanda, I'm just like, well, hello, who are you? Who am I to you? It can be nice to throw my legs around and to do fun stuff, but it's not really going to keep me satisfied. And on the other hand, there are also dances where I go into the embrace, and it's very, very warm and very personal and very wonderful and very expressive. But I feel like I'm just carrying this person around, or I have to compensate a lot so that this connection works at all. So we kind of need both. But it's not to say that, it's impossible to dance tango without one or the other. Yeah, you can. It's just not going to be complete.
I hope that was useful. Keep an eye for the second and third part of the interview. We're going to cover how connection works, how conscious movement can improve your tango, which muscles can help you dance better, when is the only moment that you don't need to be on your heels, and much more. Make sure to connect with Oa on social media. There should be some links available around this content. And if any of the topics that we discussed were interesting for you, feel free to get in touch with her, maybe get a private class. If you live nearby, maybe have an online class. It's up to you. For more free tips, join the Curious Tanguero newsletter. And if you want to support the podcast, you can go to Amazon and buy any and as many books of mine as you like. Most people know my book Tangofulness, which is available in 12 languages, soon in 14. But you can also enjoy the novel When the Embrace Whispers, or the collection of tango advice, Tango Tips by the Maestros, or the book How to Dance More in Milongas for followers, which is the result of a questionnaire that I sent to over 16,000 social tango dancers. They are all on Amazon. Links to them should be somewhere around this content. Hugs and stay curious.